Hi there, and welcome to another HOI4 modding lesson from the Iron Workshop. In this lesson we're going to be learning how to create a brand new country in the game. Now this lesson has been updated to La Resistance and the latest patch, so all the information should be relevant. Now a lot of things are going to be very similar to my previous lesson, but obviously since things changed, I have decided to re-upload this lesson to make sure that everything works. We'll also be using some new tools, so hopefully less people will have issues in getting their countries working this time around. And with that said, let's get to it. Okay, now before we begin, one thing that is very important for me to mention is that throughout this lesson we'll be creating files and folders, and it's very important that you stick to how I do things in this lesson and do them exactly the same way. When you're more experienced, you can try to do things a bit differently, but for the purpose of this lesson, if you want your country to work and to display properly in the game, you will have to follow my instructions as they are. And one very important thing is the folder and file structure, which has to be similar to the vanilla game. If they're not similar, if the files are not in the same folders, then the game will not be able to read your country and it will not show up in the game, which could cause unnecessary frustration for you. So just make sure to follow these steps and everything will be fine. Okay, so there are 7 steps to creating a new country in HOI4, and these are the 7 steps that we're going to follow. So the first one is to create a mod. So to do that, we're going to start the HOI4 launcher. In the launcher, we're going to go to mods, click on mod tools, click on create mod, and now we're going to assign a name to our country mod. I'm going to call it Bikini Bottom. I'm going to give it the version number, which is 1.0. And I'm going to assign a folder in which the files are going to be located at. So the folder, it's best if it's in small letters and no spaces. So it's going to be Bikini Bottom in one word. And I'll also be assigning some tags and then click on Create Mod. Now what this does, it creates all the necessary basic files for your mod to function in the game, so that you don't have to, and we'll be using these files that we've created in this step as we go along with this lesson. We're done with the launcher for now, you can just close it. The next step is to create the country folders and files. These are the folders and the files that we will need for a country to work in the game. So to do that, I will first of all go to the folder that we've created in the previous step. This one can be located in Documents, Paradox Interactive, HOI4, Mod, and in here you'll see the folder that we've created, in this case Bikini Bottom, and there's also a Bikini Bottom mod file which was also created for us. So I'm just going to open this one. You can keep the descriptor file for now, we don't really need to mess with it at this point. And alongside that, I'm going to open the vanilla HOI4 folder. That one can be located in Steam, Steam Apps, Common, HOI4. And now we'll be recreating some of the folders and the files that we need for our country. So the first one is the Common folder. So I'm just going to create it here. Inside the Common folder, there's a folder called Countries. So I'm going to create this folder in here. And now we'll be creating the country file for our Bikini Bottom country. Now to do that, the easiest thing to do is to just take an existing country and just copy the file over. So I'm going to take a country like Belarus, for example, and I'm just going to copy it over here. And now I will open that file in Notepad++. If you don't have Notepad++, look in the description of this video. Now in here, there isn't really much that you should do, unless things like graphical sprites, the 3D models that appear on the map, are something critical to you. You can change these. So for example, in the case of Belarus, it will display the icons that are Eastern European. If you want them to be African sprites, African models, you can pick an African country, and then it will display that. And another thing that we can change in here is the color of our country on the map. Now, you can either use the current color that we have here, or you can pick a new one. Now, these three numbers are the RGB codes that the game will use to determine the color of your country on the map. And if you want to pick a custom one, I suggest you open paint.net, also a tool which you will find in the description of this video. And once you have it open, here at the bottom where you have the colors panel, click on more, and it will open the RGB values for any color on this wheel. So since it's going to be bikini bottom, I want something which is closer to the ocean blue color. So right about here should be fine. And now I'm just going to copy these values over here. So we need these RGB values. And it goes from left to right, RGB. So 53, 184, and 255. That is it. I'm going to save the file, and obviously I'm going to rename it to bikini bottom. Just like that, we have our country file ready. Now, just noting the color here is not enough. You will need another file from the countries folder, and this file is called colors. So I'm going to copy this one over here as well. And at this point, we are going to have to do another thing. Let me just open the file. We are going to have to pick the country tag that we will be using. Now, the country tag is the 3-letter identification for your country in the game, so that whenever the game needs to do something with your country, and you need to access that country, or to tell the game that you want to do something with that country, you will be using these 3 letters. Now, it's quite important to make sure that your country tag is not already taken by the game, otherwise it could cause problems. But in this case, I know that the country tag that I want to pick is not being used, so I'm just going to give it BKN, bikini bottom, or BKB actually. And I'm just going to copy it the same way it's already here. Now, I do prefer to take the RGB values, like in England. So let me just copy that in here, change that to bikini bottom. And I'm going to give it the same values that I gave it here. 53, 184, 255. And I'm going to save the file. That is it. So now we have our country file and we have a color assigned to it. So with this, we've completed number 3, which is creating our country file and the color. But we still have things to do with number 2. So we still have a few more files to copy. So I'm going to go back to common, and from the common folder, we will also need the country tags folder. So I'm going to create it here, country tags. And I'm going to copy the file over here. And now I'm going to add my country at the bottom of this file. So we already have our tag, the BKB, And to make sure that it's not being used, I'm just going to use the Notepad++ search function. We're going to search, find, and just type BKB, just to make sure that there are no other countries using it. So as you can see, it can't find it. So that's good. I'm just going to take the last entry, copy it, and assign the tag BKB, countries, and take the name of the file from here. And now the game knows that whenever it needs to access BKB, its color and other things, it will go to countries bikinibottom.txt. So that is all we need from the common folder. And now we will move on to the next step, which is creating the history file and the leader for our country. All right, now let's create our country history file. Now that file is obviously located in the history folder. So I'm going to create the history folder in here. Inside the history folder, we have the countries folder. So I'm going to create it here. And from inside this folder, I'm going to copy the Algeria file over to our mod. Now the reason that I'm using Algeria is because it's a country that doesn't exist at the beginning of the game, and its country file is quite simple and doesn't have too much information that might confuse starting modders. Now the first thing that I want to do is to rename the file. Now it's quite important that you stick to a certain naming convention, certain naming structure. So first of all, when you rename your file, you need to give it the tag of your country, so BKB in this case, and then the name of your country as well, so Bikini Bottom. Now let's open the file, and in here the first thing that I want to do is to set the capital of my country. Now to find the capital, I can go to History, States, and just search for the capital by its name. Now in most cases you will find your capital here, but in some cases you may have to go into the game in debug mode and locate the capital by just hovering the mouse over the state that you want to use, and I will show you how to do that in a moment. But for now I'm going to use the Bahamas as the capital of my country. And the ID, the number of the Bahamas state, is 690. So I'm going to type that in. And another thing that I want to do is that I want to copy the Bahamas the Bahamas file into my mod, since I also want to give the state to the Bikini Bottom country. So I'm going to recreate the states folder, and I'm going to copy it over here, and I'll open this file. And what I'm going to change here is first of all the owner. This is the owner of the state, the country that controls the state. So this one is going to be BKB, and I also want Bikini Bottom to have a core on the state. So I'm going to change this one as well. I can also change the victory point. So just for the sake of this lesson, I'm going to give it 50 victory points. And I'm going to save both of these files. Now, if you have not managed to locate the state that you want to use as the capital for your new country, or the state that you want to give to your country to have, what you can do is start the game in debug mode. If you don't know how to do that, check the lesson, which I will have a link to in the upper right corner of the screen. Okay, so to find the state that you want to use, just go into new game, select a country, doesn't really matter which country, and let's assume that I want my new country to have the state of Gotland. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hover my mouse over this state, I'm going to hold the Control and Alt key, and in here you'll see that I have something called state ID, And that is the number that I can use to give this state to my new country. So that is another way that you can locate the state that you want to use in the game. Another way that you can do this is with the notch tool, which is only available when you are in debug mode. So if you open notch and you click on states here, it will show you the identity, the ID of this state just by hovering your mouse over it. It might be quicker, but you can do it either way. It's up to you how you want to do this. Okay, I'm going to close the game at this point. Okay, so now we have our country history file. We also have the state that our country is going to use. I'm going to open the history file so that we can now focus on the next thing. First of all is assigning the ideology to my country and assigning the leader of the country. So you will notice that here we have a line that says 1939 and it says here set politics, but there's also set politics here, but it doesn't have a date. Now what this means is that everything outside of 1939 is something that will show up in 1936. The default bookmark of the game, the bookmark at which the game begins. If you want things to show up later, you will have to assign it to the bookmark. So since we want our country to appear in 1936, I'm going to be editing this section. And in this case, I want my country to be a democracy. I'm going to assign it the last election. I'm going to change elections allowed to yes. Let's give our democracy more popularity. Now note that when you set popularities, you have to make sure that all the numbers, when they're combined, they reach 100. If they're above that or below that, that could cause problems for the game. So I'm just going to go 0 to all the rest, and I'm just going to give neutrality another 30%. So that's the ideology of our country. And the last thing that I want to do is to create the leader of our country. So let's get to that. We're going to stay in this file, but this can be a bit tricky, so you will need to follow carefully. So the first thing that we need to do is to locate the syntax, the code for the country leader. Now in the Algeria file, I already have this guy, Ahmed Ben Bella. So I'm going to copy this syntax over here. I'm going to put it here. And I'm going to remove this one. And first of all, let's give him the name. So we're going to rename him to SpongeBob SquarePants. Now I'm not going to give him a description just to keep things simple, but if you want, you can write a description here, or you can assign a localization key in here. I will explain in a future lesson what localization keys are. Here we have the picture of our leader. Now you can either keep it as it is, or you can change it. Now if you want to change it, we're going to need to borrow some more folders. So in this case, I'm going to go to the root folder, the starting folder of my mod, and I'm going to recreate the next folder structure. So first of all, GFX. Next, I'm going to create a folder called leaders, just like here. And now I'm going to create the folder for my country. So BKB. And I'm going to grab this picture and drag it into my folder. And I'm going to change its name to SpongeBob. And then I'm going to open it in paint.net. Now, please note that it is quite possible that you may try to open one of these images in paint.net, but it will give you an error. If that happens, just try another file and it will probably open that other file. So we're going to change this picture to a picture of SpongeBob, which I happen to have on my desktop. So we're just going to select this thing. We're going to copy, open this one in here, and then just paste. I'm going to select keep canvas size so that it keeps the picture as the correct format in the game is. And then let's just drag this thing. By holding shift, you can keep the proportions. And now let's save our file. So click on save as. And when this menu pops up, make sure that in the settings you select the A, 8R, 8G, 8B8 option. Okay, that's the option right under DXT5. There's another one which is quite similar, but if you select this one, your file will not be shown in the game. So you have to select this one, click OK, and the file is saved. So we now have our leader portrait, and I'm just going to have to change the path here. Now, since we've created the GFX leaders BKB folder, we don't need all of this path. We can just change it to spongebob.dds. Now, a very important thing to note, in its current format, the picture will not work, the leader file will not show up. And this is because the ideology of SpongeBob currently is despotism. And despotism is not under the democratic ideology group. So I'm going to need to change that. And to do that correctly, I'm going to go to Common, Ideologies. Going to open the ideologies file and just find the types under democratic. So we're going to make SpongeBob a liberal, and now he will show up. This is actually quite a common cause for why leader portraits don't show up, because people did not assign the correct type when they set the ruling party. So make sure that you do that. Excellent. So now we have our country file, we have our leader, and we have our states. The next thing that we have to do is to create our flags. Now to do that, we're going to create a couple more folders. In the GFX folder, you will notice that I have a folder called flags. So I'm going to create it in our mod. And in here, I'm just going to copy the 3 flag files. So first of all, let's take this one. And from this folder, we will need to copy the 4 flags, which are the 4 ideologies in the game. So 1 flag for communism, 1 flag for democratic, 1 flag for fascism, and another one for neutrality. So let's copy these flags. Now these are the large flags. There is also the medium flags, which are shown when you zoom out the map. So I'm going to create the medium folder in here. And I'm going to copy the same flags. Now the reason that I took Afghanistan is because if you look here, ADU doesn't have a flag for neutrality. If it doesn't find a flag for a certain ideology, it just defaults to the file that doesn't have the name of the ideology next to it, which is useful in case you don't want to create too many flags, but this way you do keep it consistent, and in the future, if you want to change a flag for a certain ideology, it makes things easier. So let's take the Afghanistan flags, the medium flags, and copy them over here. And now we'll create the small flags folder. should be small, not smalls. So Afghanistan, Afghanistan. Now you will notice that in this case, Afghanistan is lacking a couple of flags. That's okay. As I said, the ideologies that are missing will just fall back to this one. But in our case, we want to change the flag for the democratic ideology. So we'll need to edit this flag. We will need to have a flag here for democracy. And in this folder, we will have to edit this flag. So let's start with this one. I'm going to drag it to paint.net. And now I'm going to take my bikini bottom flag and pretty much do the same thing that we did with our leader portrait. Now I've selected the whole image by pressing Ctrl+A. Now I pressed Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V, keep canvas size. And now we're just going to shrink it until it fits over the Afghanistan flag. Just like that. Let's save it. When this pops up, the save configuration, make sure that it's on 32-bit and no need to compress it. Click OK. So that's our large flag. Let's close this one. Now we'll do the medium flag. And I'm going to do the same thing. Now for the small flag, I'm going to create a separate file just to make sure that it's the correct file to be used. And once again, the same thing. Okay, done. Now, it's very important that you rename the country flags to the tag over your new country, because obviously if I keep it as Afghanistan, it's just going to override the flag of Afghanistan and not of Bikini Bottom. So I'm going to rename all of these to BKB. Now, obviously some of these will have the Afghanistan flag, but that doesn't really matter, since for the sake of this tutorial we are only focused on the democracy flag, which we changed. Make sure to change it in all of the folders. Now, in case you're wondering, you can change the name of the file quickly by selecting it and pressing F2 on your keyboard. Okay, so we now have our Bikini Bottom flag, and now one of the last steps is to assign delocalization. Now, delocalization is going to be the name of our country on the world map, in menus, and basically everywhere in the game. So to do that, in our mod root folder, main folder, we will need to create the localization folder. The localization folder, locate a file called countries_L_English, and just copy this file over here. Now let's open this file, and at the beginning of the file we will need to add the entries for our country. Now, similar to the flags, each country has entries for all the ideologies. So as an example, I will take Germany, and I will put it in here. And what I'm going to do now is select all of the German entries. I'm going to go to search, find. I'm going to go to the replace tab and find what, I'll type Germany. Here I'll type BKB and I'll click on replace all. Make sure to select the in selection button. So now it knows that all the German entries have been replaced with BKB. And another thing that I want to do here is to change the name of the country. Now again, since we're dealing only with a democratic Bikini Bottom, I'm just going to change the democracy entries, but obviously you are welcome to change all the entries for your custom country. So we're going to call it Bikini Bottom. No need for Republic. This is going to be the Bikini Bottom, and what else? Oceanic. Excellent. So this is the localization for our country. Now, actually, with number 7, we already did that. We already assigned the states for our country. If you remember, we gave our country the Bahamas state. So basically that is all. That is all you need to do to create your custom country. All that is left now is to open the game launcher. Go to mods. Select your newly created mod country. And click on play. Okay, now let's see our new Bikini Bottom country. We know that it's in the Bahamas. So as you can see, we have Bikini Bottom, we have our leader, SpongeBob SquarePants, a democracy, and we can go right into the game and play as Bikini Bottom. Okay, so that was it. As you can see, not so difficult. If you're having any difficulties, please let me know in the comments and I will try to help you as much as possible. Thank you for watching this tutorial and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye. Hey guys, if you like this video, please hit that like button and subscribe. It helps the channel grow. Check out these other videos on the Iron Workshop that you might enjoy as well. Please consider supporting the Iron Workshop on Patreon. This will allow the channel to grow and become even better. Thank you.